But because they haven't had the time to have a look at it, the details into what they've done, we cannot expect a direct answer unless, of course, they agree to it. Because but I would suspect that the best thing is to raise the issue and
process that only very specific things get mentioned at a meeting, and I think this is what Mr. Wilson is referring to, that he would rather present the full presentation so everyone gets the same benefit.
Sorry.
So through the chair, the reason I'm raising it is we have a presentation today to talk about our work program. What I'm asking is, when the committee are adding roads in for updates or to talk to individually, can you see the presentation? If there's information that's not on there, happy to talk about it. But having them raised as general business to talk about is too difficult for us to respond to.
Right, I've made a ruling on this and we're just going to move on. So there's no adjourned business. Right, so we're going to carry on now to page 10. It's the first report. And Dave, are you going to speak to this?
Come up if you like, Dave. So just while Dave's coming up to the table here, for the committee, the Engineering Professional Services panel, this is a change in approach to how we've done things in the past. So in the past, we always had professional services suppliers who were giving us the information that these companies that we're appointing do. However, they weren't necessarily contracting directly to council in all instances. Sometimes they were done through our NOC contracts or our Three Waters contracts, and we had professional suppliers come through in that way. So the reason we want to appoint our own panel is to give us better flexibility around those suppliers, and also mean that we're directly talking to the contractor who will be designing things for us. Previously, it was through our third party. So this way we have better control over the designs, the timeliness of them, but then also the scope of the works that they're doing. So if we want a culvert redesigned or if we want a bridge redesigned, we can talk about the whole of life costs and whether or not we need a Rolls-Royce or a Toyota Corolla solution. So that's part of the reason for bringing these things closer to us. There's very little rationale for having the level of suppliers on staff. So these were never roles that we used to have here in council. These are specialist suppliers for specialist advice that we have for the type of work that we have going on. And just lastly, the budget that is there, this is not an increase, this is existing budget that we were already spending through Tairāwhiti Roads. It's just bringing it out of the bigger contracts where it was sitting previously. Is there anything you want to add, Dave?
Just to add to that, because we're using subsidised funding, the funders just want to make sure we've got a transparent process. So that's the reason for this. And so we can go direct to those suppliers. We're quite excited that one of them was LDE and Becker collaboration. It's actually brought LDE, a local firm, more into that next tier. The one thing that we do have to make sure is how the work gets distributed amongst the suppliers. So by default, they've been finding around the country that there's been, even though you may have suppliers, you're preferred. And once those suppliers are on the panel, we just have to make sure there's a transparent process that the work gets circulated amongst them.
Councillor Sewell. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks. I just wonder about, just because of our history in roading, our recent history, I just wondered whether you wanted, you've talked about the fixed term, item 1B, of 4 years with a 1+1 optional terms. I mean, do you want, as long as there's an out clause if it's not working, and then this does say the implications are $1 million on the budget, not what you just said, Mr. Hetfield. You just said there was no implication on the budget because it was already allowed for, or somebody did.
Correct. I should clarify that with Mr. Dave Wilson as well, and that it's a break even, like we're already spending that, so the implications are neutral, cost neutral,
which is not what this says.
Exactly, the wording in here is led us to believe that it was an extra. So,
yeah, apologies for the confusion on it. It's more around to let you know, the intent of that was to let you know the quantum of work that we would be putting through, so we should have done better wording on that. But it is about $1 million, which is a substantial amount through the panel, which is within our current spending budget, so, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, you changed C to, you put something like the neutral implication on council's roading professional services budget.
Or even, which is within budget, a technical.
No, yeah, or that at the end, yeah.
Can we just understand though, are you happy? Because as I say, we have had some recent unhappy history around various aspects of roading. As long as you've got, because it's operational, a strong out clause if at the end of 4 years you don't want to renew it.
So through the chair, absolutely, Councillor Seymour, there's some clauses where we can add suppliers to it if we need to, but then also around reviewing the effectiveness of it and the panels that are there. So just to further footnote, the Finance and Audit Committee have an upcoming workshop, sorry, Chair of that committee, around the procurement panel and the procurement processes for the work that we have report back. It's on your work program to have our report back of the procurement review. Minter Ellison will be coming to your next meeting and they'll be discussing things like Dave raised about equitable splits through a panel supply and how you ensure that, and also the accountability and auditing of that as well. So in the background, we are reviewing to make sure that when these processes are, we do go to a panel process for you to see transparency around how that money is spent and that we're not just backing favourites.
Is that what you were sort of asking?
Well, it is covered because it is an operational aspect, but we just want to know that it's going to be covered by whatever you put in the contract if it isn't working and it's not a labour of love to get out of it.
So officially we haven't heard any updates since a paper last year of where what's happening, and we assume this business as usual.
That's not the question.
No.
No, that's a different matter altogether.
Yeah, could I also add, you know, if one supplier isn't performing, then there's 3 other suppliers that we can use. But for instance, one of the suppliers we've got is Stantec, and they're wanting a minimum of 4 years because they want to establish an office up there. If we start changing the rules on that, then yeah.
But this is only a panel. This is not a supplier of work. This is a panel to determine who will supply the work. Surely they don't need to establish themselves in an office here if they're only going to be a panel that you're going to call on from time to time when you're determining who will do this.
Some of them, they see opportunity, not just transport, but also with the commercial sectors and also with water utilities as well. This contract is only for roading suppliers.
This is only for roading.
This is only for roading. But they see opportunities, and that's what they've told us.
Look, I just wanted to add some support to this process. I think it's a good way of operating, especially in the way that in the past where the council may not have always been in total control on how the tenders have been put together. And the other aspect is actually working with the contractors in designing the contracts to get the best value out of and using sensibility and common sense around how the contract is put together, because you know there have been instances in the past where you couldn't have always said that, and I believe this is a better way of delivery, more efficient. It means that we don't have to have a huge resource in-house. We have this panel which we call on when we need them. So it's not an ongoing commitment for council to have that resource within house. So yes, I think this is a very good way of doing, and it obviously isn't novel or you know, sort of on the fringe of how things are done, because NZTA are entirely happy with this process, and they've had oversight of where it's going. So yeah, I feel very comfortable with it. I'll second it.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I support what Councillor Wilson's saying, because I believe it's not everybody inside looking at something, it's an outside view as well, and I think we'll get some really good results out of it. So, yeah, good stuff.
All in favour?
Aye.
heritage.
Yeah, this report is just to advise the committee of recycling changes that are happening globally, and it's now starting to have an effect on us here in Tairāwhiti and also nationally across New Zealand. We don't have any markets for the grade 3 plastics or sustainable markets, and those plastics are now going to have to go to landfill. We'll be working with our contractor waste management to look at a communication plan, and also for us to look at behaviour change and trying to get the messages out there that we will be changing the collections. And we will currently be collecting 1s to 7s until we actually make that change. So there won't be a change to our current collection until that message gets out there.
Thank you for a thorough report, Wayne. I was really concerned when I read this because I feel we need to make it really easy for our public to recycle. And by having some, number 1 and 2 you can't chuck out, but number 6 and 7, we will have to go out and make sure the message is well spread with stickers on the bins. I remember when we stopped taking the supermarket bags, some people would put it in, some people won't. Because in the end of the day, if we want to encourage a behaviour change, we need to make it really easy for our community to do this and to take ownership of this. So I encourage you, once we make our decision, to really think of a great comms plan of how we're going to get the community behind this so that we can make this work until we find a sustainable solution for those plastics. Thank you.
Councillor Foster, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've got major concerns as well. And the other, well, we've got a description here of grade 1 and grade 2, but there's no description of what actually 3 to 7 are. So could you please identify to us with examples of what grade 3 to 7 actually are? I mean, we've got grade 1 as a clear bottles only, grade 2 plastic, clear milk, opaque, and janitory bottles only. But yeah, there's no indication of what any of the 3 to 7s actually are.
Through the chair, 3s are cling film and plastic toys and bags. 4s are bread bags, frozen foods, bags, disposable cups. So they vary. 5s are sort of like your yogurt containers. And I think it's also your ice cream containers are 5. And then your 6s are polystyrene, which is like cups, plates, bowls, takeaway containers. And then yeah, 7s is nearly everything else really.
So generally, it's going to be a waste of time to have recycling, basically, because most of the stuff that everyone recycles now is going to be taken away. So yeah, this is going to be a huge impact on and a total shift in on how people manage their waste. It's going to be dramatic.
Through the chair, I think while this is not a great place to be, and we're not alone in dealing with this issue, it's actually a national and an international issue, and it raises some questions around how people have been behaving and how countries have been behaving around consumption and product stewardship over the last number of years. I don't think it's all doom and gloom, frankly. I think it creates the opportunity and the impetus for New Zealand and other countries to start taking more responsibility for their waste, and also an opportunity for consumers to start taking more responsibility and truly understanding what's happening with the products that they are creating the consumption for. So we're talking about 6%, we think, of the recycling stream here being the 3s to 7 making up about 6% of the tonnage. Certainly in terms of volume, it'll be higher than that, but in terms of tonnage that we're charged on, 6% is still quite a lot of tonnage, but it's actually not a huge part of the overall stream. So I wouldn't want the message to go out that recycling is a waste of time. We're talking about a 6% change here. We're talking about, we've got glass, we've got metals, we have the other plastics, we have fibre that are still valuable recycling products and still have sustainable and appropriate markets. But there's a lot of work being done in New Zealand, and I think the local paper had an article the other day that actually talked about the national task force that's working on this. It's probably one of New Zealand's biggest environmental concern areas at the moment, and the Ministry for the Environment has just completed its, I think it's the Colmar-Brunton survey. 73% of people are saying the issue around solid waste is their biggest concern at the moment, and that creates the energy to actually take this sort of thing seriously. So we're part of it, but we're certainly not alone in this.
Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman. It's interesting this. So I mean, there is at the moment, it's all very well saying that the consumer can make a choice, but they don't have a choice in many of the products. And those plastics 3 to 7 grade are the ones that actually are more persistent in our environment as well. You know, the softer plastics will eventually break down, but those harder plastics take a lot longer. But I've got a question just around, it says in the body of the report that Taupo and the far north have already started only collecting grades 1 and 2. Have we got any learnings from how all that went, so we can have a bit of an idea of what we're facing? Is that working, or is the recycling all thrown into chaos, or what? Have we got any information around that from anyone?
Through the chair, we've been talking with Taupo and Far North. By the looks of it, they're happy with the change that's happened. The community has gotten behind them around it, but that's just speaking to our counterparts over there.
But further to that, does that mean that it's actually working reasonably well? That in fact, people are only recycling grades 1 and 2, and the rest is being put in their rubbish?
Through the chair, they are going into the rubbish. They aren't accepting anything else, so anything that's put out on curbside is only 1s and 2s. So yes.
Councillor Beard.
And the waste that comes to Gisborne at present, what is the intention going ahead in front of us? There's more waste to Gisborne.
Through the chair.
I know there's a waste meeting up there at the end of the month. But I mean, this is quite concerning.
Through the chair, this is all still a waste and resource stream. As a slight reallocation. We're talking about a reallocation with the waste and resource stream here. The coast still operates the same system around recycling and waste disposal in terms of our only active landfill, the Waipi landfill. So a redistribution of volumes, but I don't think any of this is talking about cartage to increasing cartage of waste, landfill waste to Gisborne.
Supplementary, Mr. Chairman, the practice has been till that
landfill is bulging at the seams, whether it's plastic, metal or otherwise, that's when things happen. So you're just telling me the same practice will continue?
As you said, we have a meeting with around the Waipu landfill in the next couple of weeks. We'll be talking about any questions that we have around that sort of thing. I think this issue that we're talking about here is actually a district-wide issue around how we treat certain plastics, and we've got some work to do around that in terms of communication and looking at alternative options along with the rest of the country.
Thank you, Councillor Burdett. Okay, Councillor Foster.
Just one other query. You mentioned before aluminium cans were okay and they were part of 1 and 2, but there's no mention in here about aluminium cans. So they will be okay?
This is plastic. This is plastic. We're referring to plastic.
Yeah, I know, but at the end of the day, you've got to tell people what they can recycle. You know, so at the moment, they can recycle those, and you've got a list here of glass, paper, cardboard under the grade 1 and grade 2. So, yeah, what I'm saying is that when we do go public, it'd be good to not tell people what they can't put out, but what they can.
Or both. Yeah. Right. Okay, yeah, noted. Yep. Councillor Stoltz.
Just last question. Maybe it is in the report and I missed it. Like you say, other councils around and maybe other cities around the world or in New Zealand are looking at how to deal with that or what sustainable market there is. Do you have any timeframes? Is it going to be years that we will be putting this that could really be recycled into rubbish, or is it a shorter term, or do you just have no idea?
Through the Chair, no, it's not that we don't have any idea. We're not leading that process, but it is being led by the Associate Minister for the Environment, I understand, and it does engage a whole bunch of different organisations around the country, including the Ministry for the Environment and a number of councils. And this council will remember that it actually supported a lot of that process through the waste remit that we put to you last year. And I know from the discussions that I've been having that there's a lot of energy going into this. I expect that sometime during this year we will get a response from that task force, which will give some indication as to what steps need to be taken. It's actually quite a complicated beast. It's a really interesting area, and it's an area with a lot of opportunity, but it is really complex. And but they will get there, and I think we'll start to get some answers this year.
Thank you.
Right. I'm happy to move the report. Second by Councillor Burdett. Any other comments?
Actually.
Sorry? No, it was Councillor Burdett first, I think. Yeah, but it doesn't really worry me. I won't fight. Just remember, we'll toss a coin. Okay. All in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, we've got the work programme. And if we're not done by 2 o'clock, we're going to briefly adjourn for a few minutes.
At 2 o'clock, I'll need to go with a couple of the staff. We've got another update on the Wainaki main pipe break. So I think Councillor is aware the pipe has got a rather large leak in it, just north of Makaraka. So the contractors are on site and should have dug a decent hole by now. So we'll be going to find out the status of the water and just how long the repair is going to take. Hopefully it won't be very long.
at the TV to see when you're
Oh,
ready.
yeah, okay. So just push the button. Well, there we go. It's not working.
Turn it out of the way.
Oh, shit. Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. I'll talk to you. Hey, just a few things. I know councils that really want to see about what I call the stage 4, which is the delivery side, but there's a few bits in between. Whether we call that process or bureaucracy, it all comes in different forms. But I'll go through what I believe is number 2 and just give why sometimes things take a little bit long. As you said, we talked about professional services. One thing we do want to talk about is the funding approvals, and not just the transport agency with the PGF. You know, at the moment, everyone's scrambling to find out how do you access the money. So we're going through that. It kind of feels like it's a eel covered in olive oil. Just look, we've got it, and then it's gone. So that's what we're working. So we're trying to see how much we can push to the PGF, but if we can't, then it has to come back. One of the issues also is procurement, and it's not just putting out to market. We could put everything out to Downer and we'd get our program delivered easily. One is to make sure that the project gets shared around the district. So take, for instance, at the Department of Conservation at East Cape, we've given that to our supplier up there, who's Len Chappie. Unfortunately, he's busy, but we could easily give that to another supplier, but it's about trying how we spread some of that workload around. And that also includes the issues that we've had with the cattle stops, and he's been targeted with that.
Mr. Chairman, can I just ask about that, just for a start? We do want to spread our work around, but we give it to someone who's busy. You just said it. So the work doesn't get done. And shortly it will go into autumn, and then it will be winter. And it's the councillors that live out in the rural areas and in town that end up justifying the delays that we have on all of our projects.
And that's a discussion we've had with that contract. If you're too busy, then we can get another supplier. But as part of that, we're trying, that company is our preferred supplier for the East Coast townships. He put it into his registration of interest. We can always go out to Fultons or someone else.
But you should surely in a contract, and it's your management, but isn't it something, if it was a private enterprise, you would be wanting to nurture contractors, but you would have a time frame and you would want the project done in a time frame. So ability to complete should be one of the criteria when you choose as contractors, surely.
Agree, but most of that work with this contractor is council work. So it just means, I could push that ahead, it just means there's other parts that just won't get done. So, I mean, that's one of those things we've learned. We're trying to spread it. If we can't, then we can come in with another contractor. And other things come on board. I mean, Councillor Burdett said there were issues with cattle stops up there, and so we said, yep, that contract's been let for him, and he just needs to perform it. But I'll carry on. It's how we spread it. So we actually have a small supply panel. So what happens, you don't see the work actually going out in the paper as we do. It gets, we've got a process now that suppliers, and at the stage, we've got 4 that it goes out to direct, and they price and come back to us. Okay. Even that now, we've found in the last couple of contracts, some of them have come back and said we're too busy, which is what we want. They said we haven't pretended, but they thank the opportunity to at least being given that work. But it's trying to, as I said, spread that work around. The big contract that is starting is the Fulton Hogan's contract for the emergency works, and that's kicking off in the next 2 weeks. Okay? So that's several sites, which, yeah, that's right. No, it's a Tukumo Bay Seawalls. Yeah, that's Waitāhaua. Beach Road, yep. The top. So Fulton Hogan have come back to us and said they're looking at putting several crews at several spots. So, and that's what we're doing. We just need to get the work done now. And part of that is in faith in our contractors to supply. Once it's delivered, it's up to them. And we'll have to monitor it. So real briefly, it's just some of the sites we've got that is included in this site. A lot of it is in a lot of rural areas, and we do actually have to work with the freshwater plan. Some of the sites, we've got strict times we've got to work in with that. And that's just part of the process now. That's right. Okay, there's discussion about bridges. We are very close to a bridge contract. in the interim, we have been getting requests from landowners to repair some bridges, and some have been done. That's the one on Harpers Road, and some of it does get, the team will look and we make a decision, yes, it has to get done because of a priority or because it's dangerous. So that bridge there supports a lot of industry on the flats, and so it was non-negotiable, we had to go in there and fix it. Opus are actually doing our bridge contract. They've come up with this as the immediate work that we can actually go to contract very soon. There'll be discussion whether that goes to the open market or that'll go to our small panel. We haven't come up to that discussion. So there's close to $700,000 that we can do. We've asked whether that can qualify for the PGF, and so we've had no suggestions why it couldn't. I can't remember the details. I can come back to that one.
To the end, we'll lose them. You just mentioned there particularly about whether they can come out of PGF, but if they're directly as a result of flood events of last year, that's 100% funded out of NZTA.
Yes, it's 92% NZTA and 8% PGF, and it's just, and so that's flood damage stuff. We're trying to do that. There's other work that we're seeing whether we can get it funded under the PGF.
I quite understand the PGF aspect, but in the past, when there wasn't a PGF for flood work, it was 100% funded by NZTA, wasn't it?
No, it always came at it always was your base subsidy rate. Well, it's at the moment it was 68%, but we applied for a special dispensation, and that's how we were able to get 92. That's the highest. The Transport Agency will never give 100 because they always want the local authority to have some skin in the game, and this is life.
So waiting for that decision about it out of the PGF, will that delay the progress?
We're going to, so we actually still have to put contracts out, because even if you apply to the PGF, we've got to have something to show them. And so that's where this contract is about 4 weeks away. And it takes time. Wiggins, I mean, it was brought up today. So we've got a supplier, Homes Consultants, who did the other repairs. So we're hoping to get the final details of that bridge repair within the next 3 weeks.
Supplementary to that, because it's really hard to read that. Does that indicate there needs to be some strengthening of that bridge as well as the repairs?
Yeah, there was a major crack in the pier underneath. Yes. So that's the target which they're...
Is that part of that sketch?
Yes, that's right. So, it's actually not just only the repairs, but they're looking at some of the bolts that they can try and not only strengthen the bridge, but there were issues with trying to make sure the cracks in that abutment didn't get bigger. So if you do get a chance, you can look over and you can see the abutment that's affected.
Yeah. I mean, that's been known for about 8 months.
Yes, we are. And we're fighting with all our suppliers across the country. Everyone is trying, like even these consultants here, Homes, you know, they've got a lot of work that's come out from different regions. We were all fighting for the same suppliers. Yeah. As I said, we've got one bridge, Mangapora, that's gone out and been approved. Then we went to the small panel, and that's 650. Local Government Bridges Civils have got that. We'll bring a full list of what's also happening. We've got retaining wall contracts. They've gone out as well. We've got, and we're just going through their recommendations. Okay, and we can give the physical sites at the next committee if you want. The streetlight one for LED streetlights, that's going ahead. That's Electronet, just to carry on. And there was some work that was done under the CBD under verandas. Sorry for not looking there. There's other parts that still have to be going through. We've just, footpath contracts have gone out as well to repairs. We're still having to look at the CBD. There is a trial of, say, on Low Street. There's textures there that you can actually, that's probably the worst place to put it, that you can actually cover over the footpath to give it a new refresh. And we're just trying to see if it'll work. Crossings, footpath ramps are going to be upgraded as part of this footpath contract. In John Street, there's one example of a footpath length that basically just needed full replacement. We just couldn't do anything else. There's sorry, I should have mentioned too, with Susan, I just wanted to thank her for that work with professional services. That was about 7 months' work. This has taken us, the next one is the registration of interest with quarries. We're very close to coming up with some recommendations for quarry supplies. At the moment, we've also put some preliminary supplies into three suppliers that they're starting to crush already, and that's and it's interesting. We're not only ourselves, but forestry are also putting in pre-orders. That map, what it shows is what's the maximum distance they believe that we should be looking at trucking before we should be looking at other quarries and potential blend options. The big work, and that's where the network, and look, I've just focused on the state highway, is the renewals program. And this is the rehabs and resurfacing. We're in a position where we've said to our suppliers that Down in particular, that we're in a non-negotiable, these rehabs, these road constructions, these chip seals have to be done. The state highway and the local roads just cannot afford to have them not done, because if we do, then we'll be going into an unstable network. So we've made that very clear that we can't defer this work. So they've come back with a program. We've looked, Dave and I have looked them in the eye and said, just tell us now if they can't be done. They've given us the assurance that they'll bring in resources from Auckland, from Taranaki to solve it. But they'll certainly, I said, you need to give us confidence that's going to get done. Obviously, the work on Wainui Road a week ago means it's not that it gives, I said, I've got to give confidence also to our councillors. I said that, it's not a good step, even though it's a state highway, it doesn't matter. It still has to give confidence. I mean, that the work's not only going to get done, but it's going to get done well. Okay, and in regards to that work, I mean, we said to the Downers team, they came back, none of their team came up and said, how are we going to stuff this up and lose a lot of money for the company, cause a lot of reputational risk to the Downers, and clean up risk and liabilities. No one decided to wake up that morning and say, we're going to stuff this up. So it's always, as we said, it's always, you can always have lots of lessons learned, but I don't care anymore. We just need it to be delivered on time. We've got a short window now. The resurfacing program, yes, it was delayed in November and December because of weather. Whereas everyone else has got great tanks and the water supply and the tanks are full, well, that slowed our progress down in terms of December. But no excuses. Yeah, talk is cheap. We just have to get it delivered. It's non-negotiable, and that's what we've told them. So. On the Waipio Road fiasco. Recently last week. Yeah.
Has that new seal gone down actually ended up ruining the rest of the road heading into town? Because you can now see where all of the chips being ripped off the road. Yeah. So the road that hasn't been sealed actually looks worse than before. That's right, and that's what the team have had. And so we're going through the negotiations. We say basically, so that state highway is still in not model. So basically, the supply has to fix that up. There's no negotiations there. We're asking the when. Okay, and there's also issues with the windscreens. So we're working with the liability. Our expectation is they have liability insurance. The one thing we do have some issues is that there were calls within the first 6 to 8 hours that people called the council's customer services, and we've been able to log those. It's the ones, and there was a lot of information on Facebook, but no one actually logged it on to the council. So Downers are saying we're taking responsibility for all the calls that were made within that 6 hours that they lodged with council, and anything over that hasn't been officially logged, then that's basically their position is once they got the site server, people made a valid complaint, they'll pay for that. After that, I've said we don't believe it's our responsibility, and it's just how we communicate. So there's probably in total probably about 21 instances. Combination of broken windscreens and also chips in the brakes. Did you lodge an RFS or CRMS within 24 hours? No. We can come back. We joke about it, but it's not one of the finest moments. It gives confidence. Yeah. So there's a lot to fix. And so the last thing we want is, with the resurfacing program, is we get the same further on parts of the network. That's non-negotiable.
There was a story on TV the other night saying how with Kaikoura road rebuild sort of finishing and a couple of the big major highways of national importance winding down, there's actually going to be a surplus of supply in the road building industry in the next wee while.
The answer is yes to that, but one of the counters that's coming through is and I suppose it's generational, is that the new generation that's coming through want a work-life balance. And whereas before, and I'll say it, the generation just they work themselves. It was the company or nothing. And that's they try to get people, if they want to get employed, they want to make sure the work-life balance is correct. So that's what, and they're kicking back because there's a shortage in the industry.
Yes.
Oh, there's a few more. Wait. So that's the resurface, that's the chip seal, that's the rehabs, and that's the program. We've said, look, it's got to get done, and that's the asphalt plant that's coming through. I have put 2 parts on there in terms of the Jolly Stockman and Arapuni Road. That is part of that resurfacing program. Okay, and yes, the whole Jolly Stockman is getting, yeah, it is. It is. So it's just getting the equipment here, the plant's coming from Queenstown, and so we can start delivering and start getting some satisfied customers. The Gladstone Road is the CBD. It's been up to 20 years now, and that was suggested that whether that can be priced up from Custom House Street to Derby. Okay. There is some issues. That's the main street, but it's been 20 years. There's some issues. I can't give Dave confidence that we'll get the crossings in there at the right time. So it may actually, one suggestion with a compromise, we just might have to put some red paint on it, wait till Taha, and then we can come back and then get the proper crossings in there. That's the proposal, as long as one of the issues we've talked about is, and the team have raised as an issue, is that project, even though it's part of a bigger asphalt program, needs quite a lot of consultation with we're saying that we need someone just to focus within the team to make sure those, yeah. We're trying to work around the district plan regulations that we've got, which have quite strict hours that you can work through and noise limits, and we're trying. But yeah, we understand the disruption, and that's what we're trying to work around. How can we do it if we can go through early morning, late at nights? They've suggested this plant that they can be in the mix, they can work at night, and just how we work around that. It could be an option. Yeah.
On the previous slide, it shows that the Ngāpuhi Road is getting asphalt.
It's been part, so what we're hoping is at the moment, if you drive along it, you'll see the bumps. And that's because it's in terms of a council road, it's probably one of the most heavy trafficked road in the district in terms of truck numbers. They all funnel to the port. So what it will do under the guise of the PGF is we're going to bulletproof that road, and we're going to make sure, and as you'll see at the moment, there's a lot of utilities work that's going in there, that's getting paid for as part of that project. And we've said to all the utilities, once that asphalt goes in, that'll last 25 years, there'll be no one digging it up, because that's so. So is it a better surface then? It's a better, yeah, but it's actually the underneath. That asphalt it's not just as a smooth surface. You'll see it'll solve all those humps and heaves that you'll see. I wish, we'd love to use asphalt a lot of places, but it'll give us a 25-year life, subject to no one digging it up. And even on Arapuni Road, we've actually talked to our utilities, and once that goes into asphalt, it'll be the same a minimum of 10 years before anyone can dig that road up. Yeah. So that's why the hydrants and everything's been moved as part of that project. So there's a lot on. Finally, the flood damage work. So we're actually into the consenting process, and we've got about 212 sites that need consent. So, and that's just not the consent process, that's the investigation and design. So, and then we'll lodge that. The cost of that is probably, by the time we finish the investigations, designs, and to be able to lodge the consents and get it, we're looking probably in the order around close to $1.5 to $2 million.
would be really good for those of us that really are passionate about roads if we could understand, if there was able to some next time to give us a graph that shows what kind of aspects are closed off. Because I have a view about, because we're familiar with the different levels of flood event that's still sitting out there. So if we're to believe that there's only 300 and something, 300 and nearly 410 still to be closed off, that's actually not a lot. So that means that a great number of relatively minor, one imagines, have been dealt to already. So it'd be really interesting to know the scope, if you like, of and are all of them, is everything expected to be repaired? Although I think I've already read it's going to take 2 years.
We've put a 3-year program.
Yes.
And it's just, and
so we need to see
but we can bring that forward, but we thought that was a realistic program.
But it would be good to know what's prioritised and what's not. For year one.
Yeah, it does.
Because you've just about shot your construction season for this year anyway.
Yeah, and it actually gets not complicated, but what happens, there's some sites which we call lower risk, but because we've got our consents and they're easy, we're doing that, whereas some of the higher risks are taking more designs.
We understand that.
So, but as I said, for the very first slide, I'm sorry, I'll try and finish. The very first slide is we get something like Moronoo Road, whereas we're talking to the landowners and say, why aren't you doing those 2 sites, but you're doing that site? And so that's, we just have to communicate that with them, which we are.
The difference between dispatches closed off is not unique to this 400. So where is the difference? What is the difference between a dispatch and a closed off?
Yes. So a dispatch was something that came in where it might have been a little slip, they've cleaned it, or a drain that's cleaned off, and they've come back and they've closed it off and saying that's been completed.
But then it says 212 and 202 I think there might be more than that. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. I suppose.
Between 3,182 and 3,596.
Okay. I suppose what they're saying is that there's, in my interpretation of, and I'll come back to it, the 202 is the one they potentially may be able to do some work.
If left over, 414 is what's left over, 212 and design consent elements.
And 200 we can go. Yeah. But I'll confirm that. That's what I've got there.
Yep. So are you?
I've got about 4 other slides. I'll be real quick. But other than that, there's still stuff that goes on.
I don't know that I should put any more pressure on you, because obviously you guys are under huge pressure. State Highway 35, Dave, in terms of general maintenance, north of Tolliga Bay. From Gisborne to Tolliga is the most maintained road of anywhere in New Zealand, and there's still contractors there. It's had miles and miles of new seal put in. But north, if you go to Wharekahika, which is just north of Tolliga Bay, there's a 300 to 400 yard strip or metre strip. It's been like that for a long, long time. And what's happening with our contractors? They come in, dig up the road, prepare it to seal status, and bugger off. Of course, you get rain, you get the heavy traffic over it, and suddenly it's a mess. And in some instances, it's months before they come back to fix it. That's the main squeal with the northern area. If you go north of Tikatik, Gudgeon's Hill, I came here in August last year to this very meeting and asked that the single lane on the top of the hill was the result of a dropout be repaired. The dropout has been fixed and the little bit of seal that was required to be done hasn't been done. Further north, the same thing. There's roading prepared for seal and just left. So my question is, who actually prioritises where the work goes, and are there timelines put on these work schedules?
Yeah. So it's a combined between our team and Downer's team, but eventually what happens is we can direct the work to that site. So sometimes what does get confusing and we may not communicate is that some of these sites are up for rehab. So you'll see the bare minimum to make the road safe until the big machines turn up to the sites. And that's what I kept the discussion just about local roads today, but there's just the big maps in terms of the state highway. Instead of State Highway 35 is the rehab. So it's trying to keep that safe until, and I say, you'll see in the next 2 months, a lot of work going up on the whole network.
It's not safe.
Porekarka
Porekarka at the moment is not safe.
Oh, no, Porekarka is.
Graham, I spoke to you about it and you went over it. It's an appalling state.
Right.
And people did work on it, and Mr. Wilson's not in the room, but he knows about it, and it's directed some work to be done before Christmas because it was unsafe for the tourists that would be travelling and not experiencing our roads. It is completely broken up now. There was only a multitude of potholes previously. It is an absolute disgrace, and it has been worked on, got up to a standard that ought to be sealed, and is abandoned again. And I mean, the public just wonder what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
And don't cut into me again, please. Let me finish. Potholes Day. I don't know what the policy is. You and I have had this conversation probably a dozen times. Downers and I have been singing their praise because they are on the highway. But potholes, they come along and put some pitch in, they pound it, and away they go. The trucks come along and suddenly there's bubbles both sides. Back come downers within a week, take the bubbles out and put some more pitch in. Surely, at the end of the day, we can come down to a better policy than that. Because that is all the way up the coast, right to the Waikato Valley. And these guys, look at these guys. I mean, I've told you about them there with a pick and a shovel and a
that's good.
wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
God.
It's an unstable network. I've mentioned here State Highway 35 at the moment, and we've got to make sure the rehab and those reseals are the critical component with it. And that's what and they have to be delivered. They have to be delivered. And as we said, it's non-negotiable.
And the local roads.
Yeah.
Our own roads. As we go inland, as we go out to the beaches, some of them are good. Some of them have been well maintained by downers. But then you've got water tabling, you've got overhanging branches, and our people are generally moaning about the lack of attention to that. Our local roads, I went up through Ihungia, right through Taurewhipara, over and down through Hokoro, came out at the bottom of Waimata and went back inland and had a good look. So I know what I'm talking about. You know, and there were bugger all contractors on the road. Some of our own local guys, but very few. So I'm just wondering, where is the issue? Again, it comes back to when you put out tenders and approve that. Are there timelines there put in so that people get on and do the job?
Yeah, obviously there's timelines, and sometimes we have conflicting, and this is just for local roads. Sometimes we've not even push the state highways out to one side.
This is just our network.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just talking about the local roads. So there's a lot of demand out there, and we're trying to the best the team can do. And like I say, we've just got to make sure that we do the rehab and resurfacing program, which will fix that. We haven't discussed the unsealed program yet, but we're almost ready to. So as I said, we've got the metal. We're starting to get that underway. Where that gets delivered, and I'm hoping to be able to at least give you that within the next 2 weeks.
Why, Carl? What are we going to do about my relations constantly moaning?
Well, yeah, they can. Yeah.
Oh, how about we
Look, I know.
Oh,
I've got
What we'll do is we'll carry on. We're in a phase of where we're getting things changed around. Hopefully, we can get things satisfied to you.
I'm not getting at him. I'm just putting the issues.
Okay, so we've got them. Yep, very good. Thank you.
I'm almost finished.
We've got about 3 more.
Three more slides. Just to let you know, also in the background too, there's a system, the review of that. So we're hoping that will come back to the committee.
And you're right.
Yeah, the committee pretty soon. Okay, I haven't seen the recommendations yet. The team is still looking for it, so that's on its way. Massey Street to Shelley, that's the continuation. Those design plans should be getting very close to being finished. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, thank you very much.
Thank you. I said I'd wait till the end. I would like us to have a presentation that clearly defines the bridge replacement or those that need strengthening as subsequent to the heavy rainfall event of the 4th of June, and what the timeframes are. Because as I did say in the email, it's nearly 9 months since the 4th of June. last year, and we're just about through a whole construction season, and we owe it to the community to get some answers, not we're working with and we're talking to and we're working with and we're waiting for, is what we get back all the time. So I really do think we need to get some clear answers about what we can expect and who can expect to be continuing around pieces of red. And it's interesting, I know people find this exceptionally boring, but once you RFS this, and I find it interesting that it takes a councillor to go out and take some photos, it got fixed the next day because it's a health and safety issue. So where are our road people that are supposed to be out on the road noticing, because this plastic doesn't last very long in the sun, and there's another one on the Waimoke Road that Nick's restored, but it is breaking down. So that was repaired yesterday after I RFS'd it. But if you don't go out and look at these things, they just get ignored, and people hope that, it would seem to me, that people in here hope they'll go away. So I do feel we are not delivering for our communities on the flood damage stuff. And it's fine while it's dry and people can negotiate around a road that's a single lane. You wait till it gets really wet and people have to negotiate those flood damaged places, the part on the Moanui Road we saw previously, which may have occurred recently. It just makes our network really unsafe. And I'm not happy with the information we've been given. Thank you.
And there was some other mentions at the start.
Through the chair, there's Waikawa Road, Waikawa Bay. We did agree to do a work program of $27,000 a year, I believe. And this year there was one day where there's work done on it, just pre-Christmas. And I'd like to think that you could not do $27,000 worth of work in one day.
13.
Pardon?
13,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so
that will be reported back for our next meeting, by which time we'll be past the construction season. But, you know, that's been asked in a formal way previous too.
right, we've got it open, so that's okay.
So the last time we'd like to move to the seal of report.
Yeah.
Moved by Councillor Bennett, seconded by Councillor Scott. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
I'll move that we go into public excluded, just move the minutes.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councillor Stoll, seconded by Councillor Seymour.
And I'll move the minutes.
We're going to, Councillor Stoll is moving the comprehension and everything else. Seconded, I can't second it.
I will.
Seconded by Councillor Seymour. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
I move that we go back.
Seconded by,